Tracking with the gates of trust. We're going straight into the studies this morning. L'chaim, cup of coffee. If you missed last night's class on how to run a more meaningful Seder at home, it's available on youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. That's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. You can watch the entire class over there. So we're talking now about the gates of trust by Rabbeinu Bechaye, 10th century scholar, who is clarifying for us the 7 questions that we're trying to deal with. The first one, what is trust? Second one is, what would induce trust in men? The third one is the grounds that make it obligatory to trust in God and at the same time to employ means to gain a livelihood. We're right now on the second one, so let's go straight into it. Good morning, Marty. He agrees mornings are better. Susan Pelosi, Susan Benson. Evening was wonderful. My brother Uriel from Muncie. Robin, I think it would be interesting to have a few classes on some of the prophecies that show Mashiach is coming. That's exactly my plan, Robin. That's what I want to do. So let's go straight into this. It's the gates of trust. And I'm continuing. Yesterday we spoke about the 7 conditions that justify you trusting in something else. And a quick summary on what they were. Number 1, the thing that you're trusting in has got to exhibit compassion, empathy, and love. Number 2, that entity actually cares about you. Number 3, that entity is strong and doesn't have to compete with any other entities to be able to provide you with your needs. Number 4, that entity knows exactly what you need in an intimate way. Number 5, that you are in the exclusive care of that entity. Number 6 is pretty similar to 5, that it was no one else. The affairs of the one who he trusts are entirely in the hands of the one in whom he trusts. And number 7, that entity is absolutely generous and kind. So let's continue. These conditions are found only in God. And that's the conclusion, the logical conclusion that Rabbeinu Bechaye is coming to right now. This is not a matter of faith. This is rational logic of why you should be trusting only in God and nothing else. To trust in anything else is an exercise in futility. It's like my Hebrew teacher said in high school, you're mincing water. You're wasting your time if you're trusting in something else other than God. Let's take a look. If you have the book, we're on page 369 in Duties of the Heart. If you don't, just follow along with us, please. When we investigate these 7 conditions, we find none of them in any created being, but we find all of them in the Creator, may he be exalted. He is compassionate towards his creatures. As it is written, God is compassionate and gracious. And should not I have compassion for Nineveh, the great city? This is talking about the story of Jonah. We read about it on Yom Kippur. It's a fascinating story and a very interesting connection to Passover, because at the end of the Passover story, the Egyptians came to a head in the Red Sea when they were overwhelmed by the waters of the Red Sea, and they were all drowned except for one. Only Pharaoh escaped. Now, Pharaoh ended up becoming the king of Nineveh, which is a city till this very day in Babylon, which is known as Iraq. So he became the king of Nineveh. Now, the story of Jonah the prophet, according to one interpretation, took place soon after the biblical Exodus, when Jonah was commanded by God to depart the port of Jaffa, which is still there to this very day. You can still go to the biblical Jaffa port in Israel. It's very close to Tel Aviv. And it's quite amazing to see the port where Jonah departed onto the boat, which eventually had the whales swallow him up in that very interesting story. The bottom line is that when Jonah does reach Nineveh, he tells the people that God is going to destroy them for their evil ways. And they listen very quickly. Why? Because Pharaoh knew that when God of the Jews is talking to you, you listen very closely. Yet, even though the people of Nineveh were so wicked, God says in Jonah, and should not I have compassion for Nineveh, that great city, which means God is having compassion on a wicked city. He's having compassion on a wicked city, even on the sinners. Why? Because they're just his creations. This is the unconditional love, which was the 7th quality described yesterday. It's unconditional love. It's even if you don't deserve it, he still loves you. So God is not neglectful, as it is written, truly the guardian of Israel, neither nor sleeps. It's so important to remember this. Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. As we're struggling right now with Dr. Fauci and the president and the vaccine and what's going to happen, we always need to remember that the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God will not abandon us. We are never, ever, ever alone. And that's supposed to instill within us a tremendous faith. And beyond faith, a trust in God that everything will be okay. This is what we're working towards. He is all-knowing and invincible, as it is written, wise of heart and mighty in power. Whoever stubbornly resisted him and survived, rhetoric in the book of Job. We're basically going through quotes to prove that God qualifies with all the 7 attributes we spoke about yesterday. Another quote from Chronicles: yours, God, is the greatness, is the greatness, the power, the glory, the victory, and the majesty. Hashem, your God, is in your midst, a warrior who brings victory. That's from Zephaniah. He alone governs existence and development, as it says. Is he not your father who created you? He made you and established you. That quote from the 5th book of the Torah. I have been supported by you from the womb, from my mother's belly. You removed me. That's from Psalms 71. Have you not poured me out like milk and curdled me like cheese, and so on, to the end of the chapter of Job. So we're going through the various attributes, how only God really qualifies for all these 7 logical attributes that would qualify someone, to an entity, to be for you to put your trust in it. So we're going to go through this a little quicker because it's quotes from the verse that justify and confirm, validate that God really is, personifies, anthropomorphically speaking, these attributes. Gain and loss are not controlled by man, but are in the hand of the Creator alone, as it says, who has spoken and it came to pass, and as God has commanded it. Is it not from the mouth of the Most High that good and evil come? Grass dries up, flowers wither, but the word of our God stands forever. Surely people are but grass. This attribute has already been sufficiently explained in the 3rd treatise of this book. His generosity is universal, and his kindness is all embracing. So God is kind. I know we've been talking about this recently in recent Torah study. So God is always kind. We studied about this on Friday and on Thursday last week, that no evil descends from heaven. It is for this faith that man was created. Everything is good. There is no such thing as evil. There's only revealed good and there's hidden good. And it is the purpose for which man was placed on this earth, to be able to come to that clarity and clarification, and to come to that degree of faith that you're able to see something and say, this is not evil, this is hidden good. My eyesight is wrong, not that God is evil. And that's a tremendous degree of faith. I'm not saying it's easy, but it is an aspiration for which we need to reach. And a very beautiful way to reach this, I keep on saying, is the teacher of Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Nachum of the city, the town of Gamzu. He would always say, based upon the name of his town, which is Gamzu, Gamzu also means this also. He would always say, Gamzu letovah, this also is for the good. Anything that ever happened to him, he would say, Gamzu letovah, this too is for the good. Even though it didn't look good, it didn't smell good, it didn't taste good, it was terrifying, he would say, this also is for the good. He would affirm his faith in God, his unshakable faith in God. And it was that verbal affirmation of the trust in God that everything is good, even though if it looks evil, it's still hidden good. That verbal affirmation of faith is actually what turns it into revealed good, as the Alter Rebbe explained to us in the study that we studied on Friday morning. So don't be afraid. Don't cave into the peer pressure. God is always there for us. He's always watching over us. Even though it looks evil, it's a test. Quick, back to the notes over here. I want to see people's comments. Robin, based on this reading, if one has a job that requires him to delegate responsibilities, how do you have trust that the person you delegate to will do their job right? Now, good question, Robin, but you're not trusting in them like you trust in God. You're hoping that they will do the right thing, that they'll be a mensch, and that they'll deliver the goods, but you can't say that they're infallible. Only God is infallible. Trust to jump off a cliff and know that God will catch you. That's the kind of trust you have in God. You would never have that kind of trust in a subordinate. The trust you have in a subordinate is, that when you ask them to do something, hopefully they'll do it. But the trust in God is that nothing good, bad can ever happen to you. And that's a tremendous degree of trust. Mickey, thank you for posting the book. Stephanie joined. Good morning. Thank you very much. What's going on YouTube? Let's check it out quickly. Brandon, a close friend of mine, is fighting for his life in ICU. This is even more serious than we realize. this coronavirus. And God bless your friend, Brandon. May you have a speedy and complete recovery. Good morning, Rob Berger and Ed, both on YouTube. We're splitting the crowd, but hey, it's all part of the fun. So, Robin, I hope I answered your question about why it is that it's a very, very different trust. Yes, of course, I'm not. You should be suspicious of everybody around you. You can have a business relationship, but remember, this is a mortal human being versus an immortal creator of the universe that is almighty. This is limited. This is unlimited. This is kind. God is kind. This person I'm trusting in is not necessarily all kind and unconditionally kind. And hope that God actually wants us to work with other people and to work with other entities. Let's take a look at that. So I'm carrying on. His generosity is universal, and his kindness is all embracing. As it says in Psalms, God is good to all, and his mercy is upon all of his works. That's in the Ashrei. Who gives food to all flesh, for his love endures forever. You open your hand. This line right now is actually the essence of prayer, and it's one of two lines that you have to focus in davening. If you didn't understand this line in prayer, you've not fulfilled your obligation to prayer. There's two lines that you have davening. One of them is Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. If you didn't understand the meaning of that line when you said it, you didn't daven. And the second line that you absolutely have to understand is Potech et Yadecha Masbiach Lechol Chai Ratzon. It's towards the end of the Ashrei prayer. You open your hand and satisfy every living thing with blessing, which basically means that everything God provides for all the needs of his creatures. If you didn't capture that point, good morning, my mother-in-law, Shalom, Vigler. Good to have you with us here in the classroom as we're learning the gates of trust. If you didn't say Potech et Yadecha with the right meditation, with the right understanding, and meditation means just understanding the meaning of the words, you've not fulfilled your obligation in prayer. So those two lines, I want to encourage you to daven in English to understand the meaning of your prayers. There's tremendous value to davening in the original Hebrew. However, if you are going to daven in Hebrew, you still have to make sure that you understand these two lines. Why? Because this ties in perfectly with what I've been telling you for the past few weeks. There is no such thing as evil that descends from above. There's only good that comes from above. And it's this verse that ratifies that. Both these verses. Number one, Shema Yisrael says, Hashem Echad. Hashem is all-encompassing. God is the only entity. Nothing else exists outside of God. And therefore, since God is good, everything that happens to us is only good. That's the first line. And the second line, Potech et Yadecha from Ashrei, is saying that God sustains the needs of every living being with blessing. He doesn't do it with curse. He doesn't do it with, negative energy. He does it with blessing. Everything that he gives us is for the good. Gam Zulatova, and that's the meditation that we have to be instilling upon ourselves. And this, by the way, is the reason that we have to daven every single day. Why do we daven every day? Because we need to know that everything that happened to me yesterday, which might have shaken my faith, needs to be put back into the right perspective. It needs to be put into equilibrium. Imagine your car. You drove your car off-road, like every day. You'd probably have to take it in for a service every morning to calibrate the wheels. That's what we're doing. Our souls are going off-road in this body of ours, in this wild world that we live in. We live with such fear and anxiety around us that every day you need to calibrate. That calibration, that's davening. And that's why you need to get your balance every single day. It's not enough to say that I davened 8 months ago in Yom Kippur. I need to daven every single morning to find my balance, to find my stability, to find my faith. I'm glad you're connecting with the message. Shviger, thank you for letting me know. Good to have you with us. Hope you stick around. So we're continuing getting the gates of trust. If you just joined us, this is the 10th century work by Rabbi B'chaye, which the Rebbe always quotes as the essence of our trust in God. This is the essence of our relationship with God. We're very into our relationship with our spouses. We're very into our relationship with our kids. But how into are we into our relationship with God? That's what this lesson is about making peace and coming to a strong comfort level with our relationship with God. Many of us have a very suspicious relationship with God, where he does weird things and we try to stay out of his way, sort of thing. But this is about taking on our relationship with God, taking the bulls by the horn and taking full responsibility, being proactive about our relationship with Hashem. That's what this is all about. Bob Wertheimer, good morning. Welcome to Morning Torah Study, Souls on Fire. Andy Siegelstein. It's time to explain the unusual name of God as Pachad Yitzchak, the fear of Isaac. For those who trust no fear, like the last 4 words in Adon Olam, fear of the plague is for those who don't trust fully, not for us. For us, God is with me, I don't fear. This is exactly right. And Andy, I posted a poem a beautiful poem yesterday, which I saw that you enjoyed, you commented on. A beautiful poem that speaks about coronavirus pandemic. I wonder if there's a way to post that right here so that our Facebook listeners can enjoy that poem as well. It's about a 4 or 5 minute poem, but it is so beautiful in terms of instilling our faith and understanding the lessons from this coronavirus. A Jew doesn't ever ask why. A Jew always knows that God is in control. He doesn't need an explanation. God doesn't work for me so that God could justify or rationalize or explain to me why he's doing what he's doing. I work for God. God doesn't work for me. There's no need for God to explain to me why he does certain things. The word lama in Hebrew means why, but it also means lema, which is for what? For what purpose? A Jew doesn't ask why, lama. The Jew asks lema, for what purpose am I in this situation? What am I supposed to do? What does God want from me to do in this situation? And perhaps what God wants from us, I propose that what God wants from us in this situation is that God wants our attention. God wants us to say, hey, he actually does exist. We live in this 2020 sophisticated technological generation where we don't need God for anything. And suddenly we get this biblical plague rained upon us where we realize that we are helpless. We don't have a clue how we got into this problem, nor how we're going to get out of this problem. Suddenly we realize that we have no one else to turn to. And by the way, it does say in the biblical prophecy that before Mashiach will come, there'll be the situation where the people of Israel will have no one else to turn to but to their Father in heaven, at which point, when we turn to our Father in heaven, the Mashiach will rise on the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, the oldest continuously used cemetery in the history of the world, and you'll stand up there and you'll say, Anovim, Anovim, humble ones, Higi azman geulatchem, the time of your redemption has arrived. Kol ma she'asisi, everything that I have done, le'asisi, I have not done, Ella, except only bishvilchem, for you. Perhaps the purpose of all of this is because God wants a more meaningful relationship with us. Maybe we've lost contact with our Father in heaven. Maybe he sent us this plague to say, listen, guys, with Facebook, with Google, with Uber, and with Waze, and all of your fancy technological apps, you've lost touch with me. Let's restore the connection. And what we're doing right here is making a more meaningful relationship with God. Maybe this is what it's all about. So Harvey is asking a question. Shelley, good morning. Welcome to Our Souls on Fire, the scholars. How does it square with God giving man free will and man as a penchant for an evil inclination which we fight to overcome? Okay, let's take on your profound question here, Harvey. I'm going to do this. Lauren Feingold, good morning on YouTube. Shalom Leah, good to have you with us. So, Harvey, I'm going to answer your question like this. I'm about to put to rest a question that has been plaguing mankind for thousands of years. I'm going to give you the Chabad answer. Chabad philosophy, you'll now understand why Chabad is so brilliant, why the philosophy is profound. What excited me or turned me on to Judaism is Chabad. I'm going to give you an answer. It's going to take about 4 questions. How does God allow us to have free will? And free will means that we have an evil inclination. No, you know what? Let me ask you, is your question, how does free will coexist with God's almighty, all-knowing? Is that the question? Maybe I misunderstood your question. I'm not sure if I fully understand what you're asking. While you clarify your question, I'm just going to finish this paragraph, okay? So again, these 7 qualities united in the Creator, may he be exalted, and not in the creatures, is dictated by reason. It's rational logic that there is nothing else that you should be trusting in other than God Almighty, because God is almighty, and God is all kind, and God is just. That's the reason why God is the only entity we should trust in. And if you think it's a crazy idea, it says it on our money, on our dollar bill. In God we trust, not in the bank, not in the Federal Reserve, not in the federal bailout. We don't trust in anything other than God Almighty. This is what the amazing founding fathers of this country also believed and ratified by putting it clearly on our money. Okay, good. So that's the question. Let me just finish this paragraph. When this becomes clear to a person, and he grasps firmly the true nature of the Creator's kindness, he will trust in him, surrender himself completely to him, leave the guidance of his life to him, never suspect his judgment, nor be angered at what he has chosen for him. As David, peace be unto him, said, I lift up the cup of salvation and call out with God's name. I found trouble and sorrow, and I called out with God's name. Guys, I want you to read realign your relationship with God. God is not some angry cop in the sky. God is not some insecure tyrant that wants us to be humiliated or degraded before him when we subject to his will. God is the benevolent creator of the universe that is actually our essence. All that God is asking us to do is to make peace with our truest, deepest essence. When you observe the will of God, you're not surrendering yourself before a mighty tyrant. You are surrendering your external self to your internal self. You are becoming organic. God is not something outside of you. God is not external of you. God is you. The question is, how deep can you dig? So just to address Harvey's question, which is a very deep question, how can free will coexist with evil if God does only good? Okay, so it's not exactly what I thought. Hang on. So how can free will exist with evil? No. Harvey, hang on a second. There's no such thing as evil. I'm not sure if you heard the Friday morning class. There is no such thing. I'm not sure where free will comes into this conversation, Harvey. The question is evil. How can evil exist if God does only good? And the answer to that is, we went through this in a very, very animated lesson on Friday morning. If you missed it, just go back to the youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. That's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, where you will find the Friday morning class recording. It was quite a profound conversation about how evil can exist when God is only good. And the answer to that in brief is that there is no such thing as evil. Evil is an apparition. It's only hidden good. It is our sight, our vision, which is shaded or clouded. We cannot see clearly, but everything is actually good. We just don't necessarily see it as good yet, but everything that comes from God is good. So I'm not sure where free will comes into this, Harvey. If you could clarify a little further, if that answers your question or not. I'm not quite clear exactly what you're asking. I thought that you were asking, how can we have free will if God knows what we are going to do? If God is all-knowing, then how can we have free will? I thought that was your question, but if not, then maybe you're asking that how can free will exist, meaning to say that how can man be able to do evil if God doesn't allow evil? I'm not sure. If you could just clarify a little bit more, Harvey. I'm sorry to ask you to do that. But meanwhile, I'm going to keep on going and check. I'm going to check the comments here on YouTube a second. No comments on YouTube, so I'm going to carry on with Hayom Yom. Okay, today is April 1st. Where does April 1st come from? Is that like a pagan thing? Is that a religious thing, this April Fool's Day? Curious to know if that's like, what is the origin of April Fool's Day? Imagine waking up and finding out that this coronavirus thing was just one big, that would be nice. Waking up to find out it was a nightmare. Anyways, today's Yom Yom is the 7th of Nisan. It's a bit of a genealogy story here. We start off with a textual, grammatical pointer. When we say Vayhi bin Saharon, we open the ark. Vayhi bin Saharon, Vayomer Moshe. We say V'chirtzon kolam chabeit Yisrael. Just follow along the grammar in the book. The last name of the Alter Rebbe was Baruchovich. I guess back then in Russia you were named after your father. Your last name was your father's first name. So the Alter Rebbe's father, his name was Baruch. So his last name was Baruchovich, as if that's how you were named by your father's identity. So I'd be Avramovich because my father's name is Abraham. I'd be Abramowitz, I guess. So the Alter Rebbe's family name was Baruchovich. The Mittler Rebbe's last name was Shneuri, named after his father. And the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Chabad Rebbe's last name was Shneir's son. I guess by then, the third Chabad Rebbe's time, it was already that people decided to stop changing last names, and that's how they stuck, which is the way that we are until this very day. Harvey, I haven't seen your further comment. I'm not sure if I've answered your question or not. If not, then please do comment over here. I would love to hear your thoughts. Always good to hear from you. In any event, I'm just going to go further right now in our study of Talmud. Ein Yaakov, which is the 15th century work distilling the stories of the Talmud away from the legal components of the Talmud. I see Brandon joined us on Facebook. Interesting. I guess he wants to check out the comments on Facebook. Good to see you, Brandon. There's not much commentary going on YouTube, guys. If you have any questions, comments, or criticism, do please comment on YouTube or on Facebook. We'd love to hear from you. It's always good to engage with your thoughts and comments. Remember, it's a little hard for me to talk into an empty screen. When you do comment and engage with me, it certainly makes it far more exciting. Even if you profoundly disagree with what I'm saying, it makes a good conversation. Mickey, if there is no such thing as evil, just as you had asked, how does Hashem let there exist men who do evil? If there's no such thing as evil, how does God allow evil men to exist? Oh, so maybe that's the question that Harvey's asking. I see what you're saying, Mickey. You're clarifying Harvey's question. So God left to his own devices would do only good. And you're sort of okay with that. Let's say that you're okay with that notion, at least intellectually. You're saying that God does give us free will. And that would allow us the opportunity to do evil. Okay. So I'd like to divide that into two parts. To say that evil men, certainly evil people, have the capacity to do evil. Because if they did not have the capacity to do evil, then they wouldn't have freedom of choice. So they have the ability to do evil, for sure. Whether that evil will happen to you, that's a different story. Whether that evil will actually impact you or not is only in the hands of God. And I'm going to say something which I'm going to blow up this conversation. I know you're not going to like what I'm about to tell you. But let's go for it because I love a controversy. If you know me by now. The commentaries, the Torah sages tell us that no human being can terminate the life of another human being by his free choice. A murderer can have every intent to commit murder and can do all the necessary steps to make it happen. But whether the victim will actually die or will survive the attack has nothing to do with the free will of the murderer. It's got everything to do with God's divine providence. God has decided before a person is born how much life every person will have. Some more that a person has is predetermined by God and cannot be changed by the free will of an evil person. An evil person cannot terminate the life of another human being based purely on his own free will, unless that was the will of God for the person to die at that time. Which means therefore, thank you, Harvey. I see that you agree with Mickey's explanation of your question. I appreciate that. Mickey's a good attorney too. Which means, therefore, that the evil person has free choice to do evil. But he doesn't have the ability to actually terminate life of another, unless that was the will of God. And again, we said the will of God is only good. There is no evil in the will of God. It's only hidden good. And yes, Marty, I know you're asking a question about Hitler. And Rob Berger, if you're still there, I hope you are, will come to my defense by saying that you can't throw in the Holocaust card to this conversation. I'm sure Rob is going to agree with me. Because the Holocaust is too raw, is too emotional, too close to us personally for us to really have a rational conversation about. Maybe we could talk about some other calamity that happened to our people. Why can't you just talk about a regular murderer? Like, why Hitler? Why do you have to throw Hitler into this conversation? Why can't we just talk about a regular lone wolf murderer? Why does it have to be Hitler? If a murderer decides to murder someone else, whether or not he'll actually succeed in terminating the life of the other, that is not in the hands of the free will of the murderer. It is only in the hands of the will of God. And Harvey, my question is, did I answer your question? Did I answer your question, Harvey? What do you think about it? I know Mickey's going to give me a hard time because he always does about this stuff. That's his job. He's the president. But Harvey, how do you feel about my answer to your question? Explaining the very important difference between man's free will to do evil and God's governance, which is never to allow evil to actually happen, only if it's hidden good. Susan Pelosi, if it's predetermined, then why do we pray to be written in the book of life? Great question, Susan. Wow, awesome. Okay. Putting me on the spot here. Okay, this is a very good question, Susan. Okay, so if it's predetermined. Okay, so it's predetermined by God how long every person's going to live. But you can still apply for an extension only from God. You can't apply for an extension from someone else. God is all powerful, and God does change his mind all the time, every day. God is completely fluid and allows us to intercede on our own behalf or on behalf of others for that matter, as long as you're going to the right address. Let's say a person was decreed to have 5 years of life. God forbid. Can we intercede and say God could give this kid a long life? God might say, okay, you know what? You changed my mind. That's why we daven. That's the reason that we pray. We say, Yehi ratzon milfanecha. May it be your will. We're asking God to change his mind. That's exactly what we're doing. We're not asking human beings to change their mind. We're asking God to change his mind. If God can decide before a person's born how long they're going to live, then God has every right to change his mind along the way. And maybe God will shorten that life, by the way. You know, it says in the case of Hanoch, in Genesis, in the book of Bereshit, it says that God took him away. And the commentaries are like, what the heck does that mean? What a strange expression of death, that God took him away. It basically means that God took him before his time because God decided that he didn't want him to stick around. He didn't want him to, to fall, to be influenced by the negative peer pressure around him. He wanted him to stay righteous. It says about Abraham that he died a couple years early because God didn't want him to have to suffer by seeing the wickedness of his grandson Esau. It says about King David that he was supposed to be a stillborn. He was supposed to die at birth, but Adam prayed for him. When Adam realized that King David was going to be a stillborn, Adam actually donated 70 years of his own life so that King David could live 70 years of full life, which is, by the way, the reason that Adam died at the age of 930 years instead of the 1,000 years he was supposed to have. And King David died, guess when? 70 years old. He died on his 70th birthday. That's when King David died. When the Rebbe was very sick in 1978, the Hasidim were donating years of their life for the Rebbe. There was one guy, a father of a friend of mine, who donated the rest of his life to the Rebbe. He made like a pledge. Can you imagine? You think it's hard to make a donation to the shul? Imagine donating years of your life. Now you're talking. Serious commitment. This guy, he donated it. He's actually a neighbor of my parents-in-law. This guy donated the rest of his life to the Rebbe. And I might be a little off on the details here, but this is the part of the story that I remember. I know his son, whose name is Yitzchak ben Yitzchak. When a father dies while his wife is pregnant, typically you'll name the son after the father. So Yitzchak ben Yitzchak is the name of my friend. He was like getting on a plane or something, and then, those connecting doors from the sleeves of the airplane, I don't know what happened. Suddenly he fell down and he died. So interesting, right? So basically you can intercede before God because God is the only entity, the only power that controls us, and ask God to give us more life. So there's the answer to your question. Susan, let me know if I answered your question. Harvey, I think I answered your question, which is great. That is awesome. Thank you. Good morning, Hani. Welcome to our conversation. Marty, because it was organized effort to eliminate the Jewish people, it doesn't matter, Marty. It doesn't matter if it's an organized or a disorganized effort. What's the difference? If somebody takes a bullet and he aims it at an innocent individual and he shoots him in the head, will the guy die or survive? It's not in the power of the murderer to decide that. It doesn't matter if it's an organized effort or a disorganized effort. What's the difference? All I'm saying is that the Holocaust is a very emotional issue and very, very difficult for us to swallow. And therefore, it will, by definition, derail any rational conversation that you have on this topic. And that's why I'm always wary to introduce the Holocaust. Not that I'm afraid to address the topic, but only because I don't want to derail an intellectual conversation. If we're having a rational conversation, let's keep it rational. Let's talk about the issues head to head, not head to heart, because the head and the heart don't really communicate. Not my head to your heart or your head to my heart. They don't really communicate. You can't walk into a shiva house where somebody, somebody just lost a child and start rationalizing to them why bad things happen. They're not going to appreciate it because they're talking about their son that just died, God forbid, right? You got to be careful. They might slap you across the face, right? And throw you out head first. You got to be careful. And that's the reason, Marty, that I'm cautious to address the Holocaust as an emotional issue. I'd rather talk about it cerebrally if that's okay with you. Helen says that's a hard pill to swallow, says Warren, and I agree with you. It is a hard pill to swallow. Don't forget that it is, the Alter Rebbe told us on Friday in Tanya, that this is the faith for which man was created. Life is a test so that you and I can overcome this test when we're put in the situation for us to be able to maintain our trust in God in the midst of a hurricane. When you're holding on for dear life and you feel like everything is falling apart around you, can you hold on to God, or do you throw out the baby with the bathwater? That's the purpose for which we were placed in this world. No one said it was easy, Warren. It's hell of a hard. But God is waiting, watching you. What is Velvel going to do? What is Dovid going to do? That's the test. That's the challenge. At least when you know that you're being watched, at least when you know that it's a test, it makes it easier to endure. I hope you agree with me on that. But the knowledge that it is a test is the gift that the Alter Rebbe gives us by exposing to us the reality that you are being tested and God is watching you. So hang in there, hold on for dear life. This is going to end soon. Susan, I'm thrilled to know that you agree with my explanation. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mickey, how about the Haman and all his ancestors and all the other enemies of the Jewish people over the millenniums? Same thing exactly, Mickey. It says about Pharaoh. Let's talk about Pharaoh for a moment in the Egyptian story. It says that it was decreed that the Jewish people were going to be slaves in a foreign land. And it says that the Jewish people were going to be persecuted in that foreign land. This was told to Abraham. That it was told to him 400 years before his children were put into Egyptian slavery. If that's the case, then why were the Egyptians punished? Think about that for a moment. If it was already decreed that the Jewish people were going to suffer, then why are the Egyptians punished with the 10 plagues, and why did they have to drown in the Red Sea? The answer is that it was decreed that the Jews were going to suffer. That was already predetermined. Again, for some reason, and we spoke about this in the Holocaust conversation last week at the Men's Farbrengen. We spoke about sometimes God will have a decree that he doesn't want us to override through the doctrine of blind trust, and therefore he'll take away the doctrine, the power of blind trust from us because he wants a certain decree to take place. Like in this case where God already told Abraham, your children are going to be strangers in a foreign land. They will suffer and then they will rise with great abundance and great wealth. So that was predetermined. He didn't want us to take away that decree. And that was the decree of the Egyptian bondage. The reason that the Egyptians had to get punished, because there are many emissaries for God Almighty. It could have been anyone. Why was it the Egyptians that were the ones to persecute the Jews? That's because they were evil. Their free will was to be the ones to be the persecutors. It could have been the Babylonians. It could have been, it could have been the South Africans. Why did it have to be the North Africans, the Egyptians? Because they apparently, by their free choice, exhibited such evil that they were the ones chosen to exhibit their free will over the Jews. Okay? So I hope that answers your question. Ilan Kaufer, Town Council of Jupiter. Shalom. Welcome, Ilan, to our Torah study session here. Souls on fire. As they say, there are no atheists in a foxhole. Agreed, Harvey. My mother-in-law, your explanations are amazing. Awesome. All the answers are found in Torah. Unbelievable. Thank you, Schwiger. I do appreciate your agreement. So you should know this is a tough crowd, Schwiger. These guys were the scholars of the Daily Torah Study. They don't give me an easy time. They make me work for my pay here. And thank God I'm able to, at least for right now, one step at a time, to address their very, very smart answers. You guys are definitely asking, or you always ask fantastic questions. And I want to encourage and validate your questions, which are real, they're authentic, and more than anything, they're painful. And I know that many of your questions are coming from deep personal experience. And I, God forbid, don't want to invalidate that for 1 second. But again, within this rational and intellectual conversation, I want you to know that the answers, like my mother-in-law says, that these answers are indeed found in Torah. And like the Alter Rebbe says, it is for this faith that man was placed on this earth. And I'd like to ask you respectfully to consider reframing the context of the struggles that you've endured, your deep personal struggles, and the challenges that brought you to this very day. And some of you I know are still struggling with them right now. You're still living through very, very difficult times in conversations that you and I have had privately. I'd like to ask you respectfully to consider reframing your challenges, not as God hates me, why is he doing this to me? But as God loves me and he's testing me to bring me to a deeper connection with him by having me hold on for dear life when I have nothing else to hold on to. It's a test. God wants to connect with me on a deeper level. I hope that that's something which you can connect with. Harvey, thank you for setting off that very powerful train of thought. And I really hope that I've been able to answer your question satisfactorily. Susan Benson, is it possible to have this understanding that you were born with? Is it possible to have this understanding that I was born with because you have never deeply studied Torah yet? So yet I live by and understand all that you are saying. How did I learn this? I'm sorry, I'm getting a little confused. Is it possible to have this understanding that you were born with? I think you mean me, because I think you mean you, have never deeply studied Torah, yet I, as in you, live by and understand all that you are saying. How did I learn this? I'm a little confused here about the pronouns, Susan. I think what you're saying is, I think that what you're saying, Susan, is that it comes to me naturally, maybe because of my religious upbringing, and it doesn't come to you naturally, maybe because of your not religious upbringing, and yet you live by this. Is that what you're saying? How did you learn this? I don't know. I'm a little confused, Susan. If you clarify your question. Andy, why Egypt? Because they did not recognize the one true God of our ancestors. Why Egypt? Are you answering my question, or are you or strengthening my question? Yes, they did not recognize the one true God, the God of our ancestors. They were idolaters. Don't forget, Pharaoh was the guy that believed that he was God. I mean, this is the classic propaganda. He was so busy telling the whole world that he is God that he actually came to believe in it himself. In his conversation with Moses, he was like, I'm God. I don't know who you're talking about. He actually believed in the garbage that he was teaching everybody else. So yeah, I mean, Pharaoh was a pretty wicked guy. You're answering. You're very good. Okay, exactly right. So thank you, Andy. I appreciate you saying. I see on YouTube that Rob is coming to my defense. Try that defense in court, my Sorry. No, maybe he's not coming to my defense. Try that defense in court. My gun didn't kill the victim. God killed the victim. Yeah, that wouldn't go over too well. And Rob, I want to agree with what you're saying, that you can't say this defense in court. Let's discuss the Holocaust after Mashiach comes. Correct. We actually, by the way, that in Talmud, anytime we reach a stalemate, you know how you say stalemate in Hebrew? You know, like in the game of chess, when you have a stalemate, you call it a teku. Teku is the word for stalemate. T-E-I-K-O. Teku. T-E-I-K-U is how you say a stalemate. And the reason is because it's an acronym for Tishbi. Tishbi is the name of a town where Elijah the prophet comes from. So we refer to Elijah by his town of Tishbi. We say Tishbi yetaretz kushiyos ve'abayis. Elijah will answer unresolved questions and problems. And that's the meaning of the word stalemate. When you reach an impasse, you say, you know what, guys, let's bury the hatchet. We're going to leave this one for Elijah to answer when Mashiach comes. So that's definitely what it says over there. But you couldn't say that in a court of law. And the reason you can't say that in a court of law, Rob, and I want to say this to you, you can only say this in the heavenly court, because God knows exactly what's in the heart of each man. But an earthly court is not supposed to blame God. An earthly court is placed into this world to judge by the vision of the judge's eyes. And they're supposed to judge by the rational understanding of the judges. Yet they're not supposed to say that it was God who ultimately took the life of the victim. You're not supposed to say that. An earthly court is supposed to judge by the vision of their eyes, by the testimony of the witnesses, by the circumstantial and other evidence that they bring to the table. And they are supposed to convict the murderer, at least for the intent of wanting to do something evil. You can't say, by the way, just to extend this one step further, you can't say, well, there's no such thing as evil, so therefore the murderer should not be tried. Absolutely not. You have to say the murderer the attempted murderer, should be tried for exhibiting the evil intent. And he should suffer all of the consequences of law, and whether that means execution or being put away in jail for the rest of his life, whatever that means, you have to prosecute the aggressor to the full extent of the law. Only God is able to say this answer, Rob. And when we have an intellectual conversation about the nature of evil, it's a philosophical conversation, this is what we're supposed to talk about. But when someone comes to attack you, God forbid, when Hamas is lobbying missiles at Israel, you can't say, well, they're not going to hit us anyways unless God wants, so therefore, we're just going to carry on life as usual. You can't do that. You've got to prosecute the aggressor to the full extent of law. You got to do everything necessary, and we're going to learn this, by the way, in the Gates of Trust. That it's interesting because you're really connecting with where the Rabbeinu Bachai is right now. Everything is in the hands of God. So the next question really is, and this is what we can address probably tomorrow. The next question really is the grounds that make it obligatory to trust in God, and at the same time to employ natural means to gain a livelihood or to protect yourself from harm. If God is in control, then why do I need to employ any natural means to protect myself from an aggressor? So that's actually the next step in this conversation. Okay, let's see, Harvey, Yashikach Rebbe, you help us all deal with the scourge the world is dealing with, plus brightening up our morning with inspiration and hope. Harvey, thank you so much. I'm so touched by your words. Thank you. So if the man has evil intent, then there is evil. Yes, there is evil in the world, but whether that evil is going to affect you, that's in the hands of God. That you've got to draw a fine line between the evil of free choice that Harvey introduced to this conversation and the evil that happens to us, which is actually hidden good, and that's always in the hands of Hashem. Mickey, I hope that you can relate to that very fine line, which I'm separating between man's free choice and what actually happens to us, which is always in the hands of Hashem. Ilan Kafir, other than Passover plague, which seems to have more obvious parallels to current events, are there any others you see as directly pertinent to draw from? I've been thinking of a lot of the stories of Sodom and Gomorrah and Jonah for some reason, thinking about Hashem giving opportunities for people to look at their ways, have been struggling with how to take the learning further. I will tell you absolutely. Mickey, thank you. I appreciate your understanding that. That's awesome. If I can get you to agree, Mickey, that's a big deal because you are one tough cookie. And mind the pun. So thank you, Mickey. I really appreciate your validating my explanation there. That took a lot of hard work. Sheesh. Thank you. So Ilan, yes, I want to say to you that for sure, God is trying to get our attention. There is no doubt that God is trying to get our attention. That's what was going on in Egypt. God tells Moses explicitly that he's going to bring the 10 plagues in order to publicize my miracles, my power in the land of Egypt. God was trying to go on a publicity stunt. He wanted the world to know that he exists. And that's why he brought the plagues of Egypt, not only for the Jews to know that God exists, but for the Gentiles to know that God exists. Because God wants a meaningful relationship not only with the Jews, but also with the Gentiles. And that's you see in the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. God would have wanted and would have been more than happy for Sodom and Gomorrah to be righteous individuals, and he would have gladly saved them. God wants a meaningful relationship with Sodom and Gomorrah as well, right? The problem is that they didn't have that. And that was very disappointing to God. God wants a meaningful relationship with every single human being. I definitely think that this coronavirus is a biblical essence. Just a quick thing I want to tell you is that when King David ran a census on the Jewish people, his advisors advised him against it. They told him not to do it because you're not supposed to count Jewish people. He did it anyways. And God comes to him and he says, listen, you've sinned, you've counted Jews. And therefore, I'm going to ask you to take a choice. If you want to fall into the hands of your enemies or if you want a plague to fall upon you. How do you want to suffer? And David tells the prophet, he says, I'd rather choose the plague because I'd rather fall into the hands of God than fall into the hands of another person. Interesting, very interesting in light of this whole conversation of free will and always being under the guidance of God. He says, I'd rather fall into the plague because then I'm exclusively in the power of God rather than falling into the hands of a suffering of my enemies because I'm going to be subject to their free will, and that's not a comfortable place to be in. It's a little too much of a gray area. And that's when 70,000 of David's soldiers die from the plague. So a plague is certainly something which begins by the hand of God and ends by the hand of God. It is clearly, undoubtedly, an opportunity that God is saying, listen, guys, I'm here. Please notice me. That's what's happening. And that's why I feel, like I said earlier in this conversation, that certainly what we need to be doing right now is learning the lessons of what's happening right now, which is saying God is trying to get our attention. Let's give him that attention. God feels neglected in exactly the same way that you would feel if your one and only child ignored you for like 20 or 30 or 50 years. What would you do if your child wasn't talking to you and ignored your existence and you were paying their credit card bills? Would you be suddenly one day decide to just cut the credit card? And then suddenly you get a phone call, hey dad, what happened? My credit card declined, right? And you'd be like, oh, you do remember my phone number, right? So that's the relationship that we have with God. God is saying, listen, you've forgotten about me. I feel neglected. Why you would probably do worse than what God is doing if your kid was doing that. So that definitely, Ilan, is what I feel is going on over here. And I definitely feel the Mashiach is coming, and it is right around the corner. And God is preparing us for the most beautiful era when godliness will be revealed, divinity will be visually apparent all around us, and we're bracing ourselves. Never in the history of the world has there been such an arousal to divine consciousness. There is an upsurge right now. They're calling it the Great Spiritual Awakening. They're saying that the majority of Americans are turning to God in prayer. Never before has the entire world simultaneously been impacted by one single calamity, and a calamity that's not man-made. Everybody's turning to God right now. We are more spiritually sensitized than ever before in the history of the world, and therefore I believe that now more than ever, we are ready for Mashiach to come. I hope I've answered your questions, folks. This has been a fascinating conversation.